Hello, my friends. We're going to talk about the new moon in the sign of Gemini. It is on November 27th. It's at 4 degrees. That is early in the zodiac sign. And what that represents is a very, very strong Mercury component to this full moon in Gemini. Mercury rules Gemini. I'm going to tell you what it means. And we also have Mercury making a connection with Neptune. This is the first one of three because Mercury will retrograde in a few weeks. And so let's get started. I want to show you my screen. I can share the chart with you so you have something to look at besides my face. I'll just minimize my face as soon as it shows up. There we go. Thank you, Zoom. All right. So here's what the full moon in Gemini looks like for my latitude and longitude. If you live in another part of the country or the world, these energies, these placements, the house placements will be different. Things will shift a little bit. So that's why I don't talk about house placements or the ascendant or midheaven. And because we're all in a different place. But the information I do give you here today is for everybody because everybody on the planet is experiencing this full moon in Gemini. So what does it mean? When we have the moon in Gemini, and again, when it's illuminated by the sun, as it is here, there is going to be a lot of conversations happening. The moon is our emotions, and the moon is how we, generally speaking, all of us, we are expressing our emotions. There we go. I had to get that out. It is in the sign of Gemini, and with it in the sign of Gemini, that means when we're feeling emotional, we're going to be talking. Now, that might not be your personal way of emoting. However, this is going to be very visible for all of us. So if you are somebody who is very verbal and really needs to talk things out, this will amplify that. And then for those others who don't necessarily do that, we're still going to be able to see that. We're still going to see all of that happening with all of us. So the ruler of Gemini is Mercury, and Mercury is in its opposite sign of Sagittarius. And over here in this measurement, I'm going to tell you what all this means. Stay with me. It's out of bounds. The moon is also out of bounds. And that shows us that there is a lot of exceptions going on with this full moon in Gemini. And what are those exceptions? They represent so much information that we will have a hard time processing what's going on. Or if you're somebody who just loves overload, information overload, then go for it. It's just like watching TikTok for hours. You get stuff for, I don't know, shorts, my YouTube shorts. You guys know about those, 60 seconds at a time. Lots of information. You get so much information in just 1 hour. That's the moon, the full moon in Gemini. Gemini ruled by Mercury in Sagittarius. Sagittarius is not a great place for the Mercury because we tend to say too much. This shows me that there's an overload, an abundance of information. There's a lot of movement, for a lot of people, there'll be a lot of travel. I know I'm posting this just before Thanksgiving here for the United States. So we're already into a lot of travel, but this is for Monday after Thanksgiving. So Monday, the 27th. So just know that you'll have a lot of company if you're driving somewhere and going somewhere. But on the other hand, again, this is a lot of information coming at us, and it can feel overwhelming. And the reason it can feel overwhelming is twofold. And I'll show you why. I'll mark on the screen here. So here's the full moon right there. And then you look right here, look at that symbol there is Mars. Mars is hanging out right next to where the sun is in Sagittarius. And so that just means that there is a lot of energy behind it. Mars in Sagittarius is fiery. It's dynamic, right? It's excited conversation, but it can also be, arguments. Here's Mercury in Sagittarius. So we have 3 planets in Sagittarius during this full moon in Gemini. And that means, again, that there's just a lot of information coming at us. Sagittarius rules foreign countries, foreign travel, foreign to the country that you are in. And so that could also mean that there's more news than ever coming from other countries. That's just a side note. I don't think that is overly, to me, that's not overly informative as to what I like to do here. I like to tell us how we can use these energies. But if that's something that's important to you, you can expect to see more of that. What we also have when we have Mercury ruling the full moon, let me get you the other thing that I said it was twofold. So the Mars to the full moon is 1 plus the full moon. Let me grab another color here for us just to, if I can get my mouse to work. There we go. There's Mercury, and Mercury in Sag. I already explained that. But Mercury in Sagittarius is also in a square aspect to Neptune. That happens just after the full moon. So there's a peak effect happening here. Mercury squaring Neptune will happen 3 times. Let me get my notes. Actually, I think it happens twice because it's really, really close to, it'll happen again in January 8th. Mercury will square Neptune because Mercury will retrograde in a few weeks from now. We'll talk about that when it happens. I always do a free Mercury retrograde talk with my colleague, Sue Coffin. She does numerology. So we talk about that. So keep an eye out for that. Now, so Mercury square Neptune creates a lot of fog, a lot of misunderstandings, so much information that we can't even filter it. It's really, really difficult to filter information when Mercury is squaring Neptune. So we're not sure if it's true or false. We can feel very scattered with this configuration happening during the full moon. So we need to pay attention. We need to just, during this full moon, so since this, I changed my subject 3 times in that sentence, I just recognized that. So when we get to the full moon on the 27th, again, on the East Coast, it's before sunrise even. You can see that means here's the horizon of this current chart. But so what that represents is we don't have a lot of time during that day. So it tells me that the day before, so November 26th, the day before, we will, as the moon is in its gibbous stage, coming to full, which is this chart on the screen, and the moon in Gemini, that's when we'll be feeling, all the information coming at us. We may even feel, for those who are especially sensitive, we may even feel stress and anxiety. It's too much information and no way to process it is how we feel. Anxiety is one of the root causes of anxiety, a lack of control, right? I'm not saying it's anybody's fault. It just feels like that. Now, we do have an addition here. I just wanted to talk about that too. It is a separating aspect. When you can see that here, for those who want to read the chart, other folks don't glaze over. They are separating aspects, but the sun and the moon and Mars are square to Saturn. So Saturn's almost at the midpoint of these two. So that may give us a little bit of rootedness and groundedness. But the biggest thing is that Mercury ruled full moon. Mercury not in its own sign, in a sign that is detrimental to Mercury because we say too much. That's why the full moon alone is about too much information, the full moon in Gemini, too much information and not being able to sift and sort it. But then the ruler of that full moon squaring Neptune, again, creates a lot of misunderstanding. We are blessed that we have Saturn here. People don't like Saturn, but let me tell you, there are times when it's absolutely imperative that Saturn steps in, because Saturn gives us the structure and the foundation that we're looking for, that we need. So it gives us all of that. Now let's go one step deeper. So you can actually look back in time. I'm going to give you some dates momentarily to see what this full moon may imply for you. What will it reveal for you personally? So I want you to go back to we had a new moon. This is called lunar gestation cycle. We had a new moon on May 30th, 2022. I think it was at 9 degrees of Gemini. This one, the full moon today, is at 4 degrees of Gemini. So I'm asking you to look back 18 months to the new moon. What were you initiating back then? It was on May 30th, 2022. Look back in your journals. This is why it's important for you to journal. Even if you're not into making new moon hopes and dreams and wishes and things like that, even if you're not into it, I would still like you to pay attention around every new moon so you can set intentions or see how you're, at least how you're feeling. What emotions were you working through? What information did you get? What message did you get around that time frame, that new moon in Gemini that is directly connected to the full moon that we are talking about right now, November 27th, full moon. So 18 months ago on May 30th, 2022, we had the new moon in Gemini in a very similar degree. And that means that we set intentions around our thoughts, our ideas, new information we wanted to bring in. That's what that new moon is all about. 9 months after that was the first quarter. So that's when in the sky, the moon looks like a half a pie, right? And that was February 27th, 2023, that first quarter. So that was 9 months after the new moon on May 30th, 2022. Get the gestation cycle? And so at that point, we were working towards something. We were working hard towards a new thought, a new plan, a new idea. We were implementing ideas that may have been initiated or were thought of or presented to us at that new moon. 9 months later, we're now back to today's full moon in Gemini, November 27th. And so now everything that we've been working on for the last 18 months should come into full view. This is where we do the most simple things. The simple things that we know about full moons is like we release what no longer works for us. And the way I like to see it, and especially since you get this before the full moon, as those couple of days before the full moon, and if you stayed this long, you're really getting the key to this. Just before the full moon, that gibbous phase is when we're really building, and we have a lot of work and a lot of energy, and things are really coming to an apex. At that full moon in Gemini, things are revealed. There is nothing that can be hidden when we have a full moon, because there is light both day and night. Light completely, the whole, unless you live on the top of the planet, and then there's no sun. That much we know. The sun has set up in, is it Antarctica? It's in the north. The sun has permanently set until February, the end of January, early February. However, for the rest of us who aren't at that high latitude, we have full light during the full moon. Always the sun is up or the moon is reflecting the brightest bright light it can. That means nothing can be hidden. And the things that are shown to us, do not ignore it. Do your work around letting go of things that haven't worked out for you. And sometimes we just need to wait. Sometimes that full moon can just be so overwhelming. There's so much information that we can't process it, especially since we have all of the conditions with this full moon that I've just talked about. All right. So grab those dates. I can show them to you really quickly if you'd like to see them. Let me see if I can get this up. I'm going to hit quit. Oh, that's my notes. You got to see my notes. I didn't use them. That's the written forecast, by the way. And while I'm pulling this up, I'm going to get the lunar gestation cycle for this. It's not sharing yet, is it? Is it? I hope it is. I want you to remember, hit apply. There we are. And these are the two ones. Don't forget, go ahead and get on my newsletter email list. Let me just stop the share and try again because it didn't seem to be working. There we are. Very good. Here's that full moon I mentioned. We've already been talking about. Here is this date. So that way I could put it up on the screen so you could actually see it. May 30th, 2022. There was the new moon at 9 degrees of Gemini. And then the first quarter in May 27th, 2023, there is the first quarter moon with the moon at 8 degrees of Gemini. And here we have the full moon that we're talking about for November 27th. There is the full moon at 4 degrees of Gemini. That's what it looks like in the astrology. So take all of this information, use it as you will. Know that we could be a bit overloaded with information right now. So sift and sort through what you don't need. It's like going through how many years? Hey, I'm thinking taxes. I keep a lot of years of taxes, but it's like going through my years of taxes and saying, all right, this one's 10 years old. I can shred this now. That kind of a thing. Getting rid of information you don't need anymore, whether it's actually physical or emotional or even in your heart. That's what we get to do with this full moon in the sign of Gemini. Thank you, guys. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for always continued support. And over on Patreon, if you're not watching this early over on Patreon, if you're watching this somewhere else on YouTube or Instagram or wherever, come join us over on Patreon. That's where you can support this work. And I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Blessings, everybody, and namaste.